Welcome to Outlook on Clear Channel. I'm Dan Holzman. This weekend, my guest, Loren Keim, the president of Century 21 Keim Realtors here in the Lehigh Valley and in the most part of eastern Pennsylvania as well. Loren, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Boy, what a topic. The real estate market right now. Let's start out. What is the real estate market? Is there a market at this point, or is it as bad as sometimes we're led to believe?
Well, there are still houses selling across the valley and across eastern Pennsylvania. Even in a slow market, there are people who need to sell their homes, whether they need to sell them because of a divorce or a death in the family, they're facing foreclosure. There are people who need to sell, there are people who want to buy. It is a lot slower today than it's been over the last few years. In 2006, for example, there were only about 1,800 homes on the market in the Lehigh Valley marketplace, and there were about 700 to 800 selling a month. Right now, the last 2 months, there have been around 200 going under agreement, and there are about 4,700 for sale. So that's about 4 or 5% of the homes that are on the market are actually selling in any given month.
Clearly a buyer's market at this point.
It is.
When did it turn? When did was there a sort of a individual event that changed things, or when did the worm sort of turn there?
It started turning in May of 2006. I'm not sure there's any clear reason it started turning. It's a wave. It goes up and down. It always has. It always will. We peaked as the bubble got a little too large, as too many people were able to buy houses beyond their means with the subprime mortgages. Prices were outpacing the amount of money that people could actually afford to pay, and more people had been moving out of the Lehigh Valley to the north and west because the average income wasn't buying the average house at that point in time.
Let's talk a little bit about, in terms of the typical house in the Lehigh Valley. How long is it on the market now compared to maybe how long it was, 2, 3, 5 years ago?
Well, I think the days on market, which is the indicator the Board of Realtors uses, has gone up from around 15 days to sell a house to about 78. But I don't know that that's the entire picture, because that only shows what's actually selling. The reality is, if you've got around 4,700 homes for sale and 200 sold last month, you're looking at 11 or 12 months before all the inventory is absorbed into the market. So it's a while to sell a house right now.
Wow. How long have you been doing this, the real estate business?
24 years.
Have you seen anything like this in the 24 years?
Well, I started in the real estate industry when interest rates were up at 16, 17%, and we had real trouble selling houses at that point in time. I went through a pretty nasty period in 89 and 90 when the real estate market in the Lehigh Valley crashed, and at one point almost stopped. So I'm kind of used to seeing this kind of market.
What does it mean for you, yourself personally, and for your business? I mean, how big of a hit have you guys taken?
It's pretty sizable. We're a little luckier than most organizations because we've got contracts with a number of banks, so we handle a number of foreclosures. We also have relocation contracts with some of the major employers in the Lehigh Valley, which allows us to have a stable part of the business as well.
How hard is it to convince the guy living in Macungie or the guy living in Palmer Township that now is a good time to buy a home, that it's a buyer's market at this point, because everyone hears on the radio the economy is this, the Dow is doing this. There aren't too many signs that, hey, the economy is good enough to go out and make a huge purchase like that. Is that a big part of what you're doing now, trying to be a salesman in terms of saying, hey, now, believe it or not, is the best time to buy in a long time?
Actually, I think it is the best time to buy in a long time. The market goes up and down, and when people are screaming loudest and saying how terrible it is and it'll never end and it'll go down for 10 more years, that's usually when it's about to turn. There's a life cycle to a down cycle, and this has been the longest down cycle since the late 70s. I believe we're about to turn for a couple of reasons. There's that rubber band effect where there's pent-up demand in the marketplace from people who really want to buy. Interest rates are fantastic. Prices are at a low for the last 5 years, and mortgage money is available again. So I believe we're going to start seeing some improvement this year.
Is it similar to the stock market, buy low, sell high type of a deal?
Absolutely. And houses are not only a great investment. The reality is that people buy houses to live in. Why throw money away in rent when you can actually own something?
Let's talk about the so-called housing market, the bailout that we're hearing. Is it a bailout in your opinion? And if so, sort of give us an overview, a layman's version of what it does and what it's supposed to do?
Well, the stimulus package as a whole I'm not a big fan of, but the housing component I think is going to help us a lot. It's going to help us in two ways. One is the $8,000 tax credit that we're giving to first-time buyers. And a first-time buyer is defined as anybody who hasn't owned a house in the last 3 years that they lived in. If you buy a house today, not only do you get a great price, not only do you get a great interest rate, but you can get $8,000 back from the government in January of next year, as long as you buy a house before December 1st. The other part of the package which is going to help us is the bailout of people that are in trouble that are going into foreclosure. One of the reasons our prices are dropping right now is that so many foreclosures are dumping onto the market at low prices, which is actually pulling our values down. If the government, using this Fannie Mae program, can actually keep people in their houses who are 90 or 120 days behind, it means that less foreclosures will come on the market, more of the inventory will be absorbed back into the system, and prices can stabilize.
So you think the $8,000 tax credit is a big carrot in front of the donkey to get people to make the move?
Absolutely. If you're buying a $100,000 house, let's say, and you get $8,000 back at the beginning of next year, that's free money.
Chatting with Loren Keim, president of Century 21 Keim Realtors here in the Lehigh Valley. The $8,000 tax credit, is that unprecedented, or is that something that you've also seen over the years?
This is the first time we've seen anything quite like it. There was a tax credit last year of $7,500. The difference is that $7,500 tax credit had to be paid back over time. And I think that was kind of a disincentive to take it. This is something that as long as you stay in your house for 3 years, which the majority of people do anyway, there is no recapture. You don't have to pay it back.
What else will the stimulus package mean to your industry in particular?
Well, they're going to try and keep interest rates low, buying up some of the mortgages that are out there. And like I said, just keeping people in their homes instead of allowing them to go into foreclosure, I think is really going to benefit our industry.
Generally, you said you weren't necessarily a huge fan of the entire stimulus. I mean, it's so massive. I don't know if I'm pretty sure the people who voted on it don't even know what they voted for. So the housing portion of the stimulus, how big of a chunk are we talking about there?
I don't recall the exact amount. I believe it was $75 billion.
Wow. That's a pretty decent chunk. So you're talking about roughly 10%-ish, somewhere around there.
Yeah, there's actually... they're expecting to help 7 to 9 million homeowners. I know that was in the plan. 7 to 9 million homeowners across the United States.
The Lehigh Valley the Lehigh Valley housing market. Compare that to the rest of Pennsylvania, the nation as a whole. Where do we stand in terms of that?
We're fairly comparable to most of Pennsylvania. The Pocono Mountains, which is also in the listing area, I believe, is hurt a bit worse, and that's another dynamic. The Pocono market wasn't driven as much by industry. It's driven more by people moving back and forth to New York City. And when gas prices jumped, people started moving the wrong direction. So the Pocono market's in trouble right now. Other than that, we're pretty similar to most of Pennsylvania. We've got a lot of industry here. We're not nearly as bad as Florida or Nevada or California, where the overbuilding was just obscene.
So is that why we were a little more stingy in terms of buying or in terms of building homes in other parts of the country? Is that is that the predominant problem why some states are in worse shape than others?
I think so. In addition to foreclosures, builders can take a much larger hit on a property and walk away from it in order to get their inventory down than a homeowner can. If a homeowner pays $400,000 for a new colonial and a builder builds it for $300,000, the builder can sell it for $275,000, $280,000 and not take such a huge hit, but it affects everyone around them. In the California market in Florida, it attracted money from all over the world where people believed that those markets were just going to continue to take off forever. So it was way overbuilt.
Loren Keim, my guest, president of Century 21 Keim Realtors here in the Lehigh Valley. You mentioned Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac earlier in the program. When people hear that, they just sort of their skin starts to crawl in some cases. Give me what your definition of those two organizations are and what role they played in leading us into this mess.
Well, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are called government-sponsored entities, GSEs. And basically, their job or their role in the scheme of things is to buy mortgages from lenders. If you go to Countrywide or you go to Wachovia or you go to First Union Bank, wherever you go, you're not probably borrowing money from them. You're probably borrowing money from Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae gives them the money, and the bank takes a spread on it and continues to service the loan. Fannie Mae bundles those mortgages and sells them as something called mortgage-backed securities on the secondary market. And that's how Fannie Mae stays in business. Part of the problem that we ran into over the last few years is way back in 1992 to 1994, Congress decided that we weren't giving enough loans to low-income families.